Today's project is a pretty straightforward and easy one, a porch cooler. Now, although it wasn't difficult to build, it was important to pay attention to wood movement. So let's check it out. So this was a project that I made for a customer of mine, and despite its name, it was not going to be under a porch. They said it was going to be in their backyard, exposed to all the elements. That means the extreme cold and the blistering heat. So I had a few issues I had to contend with. One, I was concerned about the correct type of wood for exterior use, and also a good top coat for exterior use. Now, both the folks over at KenCraft and at Crystal Lac were able to help me out with that, and I'll tell you their suggestions in a little bit. The other issue I was concerned with was wood movement. Having that much in temperature change, I definitely knew the wood was going to move, so I had to make sure I incorporated that into my design. Now, the last issue I had to deal with was the actual cooler itself, and most of those were made out of metal. And since I don't have that ability here in my shop, I decided to use a different alternative piece, which was 1-inch thick foam core insulation board. So here's how I built that. So the first thing is I want to cut the insulated foam board to the size that I need from the plans, and I'll tell you how you can get a free set of plans at the end of this video. Silicone is what I'm using to hold the pieces together, but before it dries, I'm placing some 2-inch galvanized roofing nails through just to hold the pieces so I can still work with it. I'm now using some HVAC foil tape. This is just going to give me one more added line of protection to make sure that I don't have any water leakage. Getting the bottom to fit, well, this is really important. So what I'm going to do is I have the insulated foam board, and I'm going to place one corner to the inside corner edge of the cooler. From there, it's just a matter of tracing the opposite two sides, and then I'll be able to cut that out. To put the hole for the drain plug, I found I need to get the drill bit to its full speed. Once it's there, then I make the cut really fast. It's not perfect, but it'll do the job. Again, placing some silicone on the inside of the hole and around some of the PVC drain plug pipe. I can place that in and allow that to dry. Now it's time for me to fit the bottom, but I don't want the bottom to be perfectly flush with the sides. The edge that has the drain plug in it, that can be flush, and I'll hold that in place again with some nails. But the back end, I pushed it up from the bottom, about 3/4 of an inch or so, and I'm using the nails again to hold that in place. That's going to allow all the water, as the ice melts, to slope towards that drain plug. And again, plenty of silicone is applied to this bottom edge because I certainly don't want anything leaking. Now the bottom back edge there, it has that void, and I was worried about that being a little weak. So what I did was I cut some extra insulation foam board, and I'm placing it in there just to make it more solid. Alright, so now it's on to the wood that I'm using. And KenCraft suggested for a good exterior wood was sassafras. This is a lightweight wood, but will hold up really well against the elements. All right, with all the pieces cut that we're going to make up the front, back, and side panels, I could have just as easily put some glue and joined them all together, and it probably would have held up just fine. But typical me, I tend to overthink things, so let me show you what I did instead. So instead of just this glued butt joint, what I decided to do was some tongue and groove on it. My reason for this was I was thinking that if these boards were really long, that if they wanted to bow or cup in any way, that tongue and groove would help keep them more flat and straight through the different elements. So my router table is set up with a bit that is going to make the tongue on one end of the board. Then by switching out the router bits to its opposing mate, I can then make the groove that will perfectly match and accept the tongue. Now I do think this tongue and groove is going to give it some strength, but I didn't like how it just looked flat then. It still looks like just kind of one big board. So what I decided to do was I put a small chamfer on the ends. So when I put it together, I have this little V groove profile going all the way across the boards. So with the chamfer bit set up in the router table, I can make that profile edge just on one side of the board, and that is going to be the side with the groove. So as you can see, that this chamfered router bit worked really well on the side that had the groove to it. However, on the side that has the tongue, this bearing doesn't allow me to get close enough to take this edge off and make the chamfer. So the way I wound up doing this was I just simply did it with a block plane. All right, now it's time for me to put the front, back, and side pieces together. And I forgot to turn the camera on in time, but I put a little bit of glue into the grooves of the board. And then checking to make sure that it's square. And on the back side, the inside, I'm just going to put a couple of pinners in there until that glue sets up. This way I can still manage and work with the boards. And this just seems like a good convenient time to do the sanding of the pieces while I can lay them nice and flat on my bench before I actually put the legs on. When you're dealing with real wood, whether it's a large board or multiple boards glued together, I still have to be concerned about wood movement. Now this is going to expand and contract. And what I don't want is I don't want it to expand to where it's going to lift the lid from closing flush. I want to make sure that the wood expands down. Well, how can I manipulate that? Let me show you this little trick. All right, so here's how I'm dealing with that wood movement. At the top edge of the board, I'm going to drill a hole all the way through. That's going to secure it in place. Now, with the fess tool, the domino tool, I can make a series of slots going down it. This way, as the wood expands, it's going to expand towards the bottom of the cooler and not towards the top. If it went towards the top, it might lift the lid open. And you can see that the slots give plenty of room for these screws to move freely. And now it's time to make some legs for this cooler. Once again, from the plans, I'm cutting them to the proper length and width. I'm using some Titebond 3 glue on this whole project. That's really good for outdoor use and holds up great against water. All right, now you can see how I'm attaching the front panel to this. Put that secured screw in, and the other screws that are going in the elongated slots, I'm making sure to put them right in the middle. Again, it'll give it plenty of room to expand and contract. And now it's just a matter of putting the other panel pieces on. All right, so I'm putting the bottom in, and this is just going to be a series of little slat boards, and I'm going to hold them in with some pocket screws. And now I'm test fitting the cooler in there to make sure that fits. And then I'm covering up the edges of the cooler with some trim boards that I made. It's not really necessary, I just thought it had a nicer clean look to it. And I'm going to put those on with a couple of screws in case some damage ever happens to that cooler and it needs to be repaired or replaced. This way they can easily swap it out. Alright, now it's time to make the actual lid. And For the most part, the procedure is the same as the panel pieces. It gets a tongue and groove on the majority of the pieces. But the ends will have a breadboard on them, and the breadboard is what's going to help keep this flat. So you can see this time I remembered to show you the glue. Having a bunch of individual pieces making up the top lid, I was worried about the growth rings on each of the individual boards. This sometimes can cause cupping and warping. So a way to help keep them flat is by taking a board going the opposite grain direction and attaching that on there. Now this too will get a tongue on this end grain, and I will wind up putting a groove on what we call the breadboard, and putting that together, that should also keep these stable and flat. So let me show you how I did that. So whenever you're routing end grain, it's important to have a sacrificial board at the end. This way, when the router bit comes through, it doesn't have any tear out or blowout of the wood fibers. And with the hand plane again, I'm just going to put that little chamfer on the ends of the board. Okay, now it's time to make the breadboards, and I've already plowed the groove into it, and now I'm going to drill some holes in it that will take some dowels, but I don't want the hole going all the way through. I just want it going maybe 3/4 of the way. Alright, so I'm test fitting the breadboard onto the tongue there, and with a drill bit I'm putting it in there. I'm just tapping it with a hammer. This is going to mark the location onto that tongue where I need to drill the holes. Now the holes at the center of the board will just be straight through. However, I have to consider wood movement going on, and this top is going to expand. So the holes on the end, I'm going to elongate them. And once again, I'm going to put a little bit of glue on it, but it's just glue at the center of the board. Again, this allows the wood to expand outward. And then I'll just drive in some dowel pins and cut them off flush. So I'm ready to attach the top, and I'm using some strap hinges, but I have a problem. The barrel of the strap hinge is going to be an issue. With it going on the correct way, the barrel is going to interfere with the top. And if I flip it around the other way, well, the hinge is not flush with the back of the leg. So an easy solution for this is, I'm just going to use my block plane and chamfer that edge of the leg. Now when I put the hinge on the opposite direction, you can see that it's flat at the top and also flush with the rear of the leg. This is simply just a matter of attaching the hinge to the inside part of the lid and then onto the back side of the leg. A quick little test of the operation of the lid to see how it functions. Okay, on this piece I decided not to stain it, but I definitely needed a good exterior top coat finish for it because it was going to be outside all year long. So I called up my friends over there at Crystal Lac, and they suggested to me their marine grade finish crab coat. Now, this has UV protectants in it. So what does that mean? Well, if I did stain that piece, these protectants would prevent the sun from fading out to that color. Also too, this top coat will not yellow over the years, which a lot of other top coats can do. It's water-based, so cleanup is a breeze. And best of all for me, it's low VOCs, which are toxic and can even cause cancer. You can brush the Crystal Lac product on, but I always like to spray, and everyone asks me what I use. This is my Earlax 5500 spray gun system. It's an HVLP, so I don't get a lot of overspray, and it's really precise. Now here's a nice little tip. I put glue on the bottom edges of the leg, the end grain. This will help prevent any water from wicking up into the legs. And now it's just a matter of attaching some of the hardware that will be the bottle cap opener and catcher. And there it is, all complete. The porch cooler ready for delivery. So that is how I made my porch cooler. And you'll notice there at the end, you saw I had carved out the customer's name and put that on, but I left that part out of the video. Now, I did mention towards the beginning of the video that I would have plans available for this, and here's how you can get them. If you sign up for our free monthly newsletter, I will have plans for that available free for 1 day only. Now, you have to sign up before January 14th, because after the 14th, once that newsletter goes out, it's gone. Once you get your newsletter, you have from January 14th at 5 p.m. until January 15th, 5 p.m. to download those plans for free. Otherwise, you'll have to pay a small price. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions on projects you're working in your shop, feel free to email me at woodchoppingtime@gmail.com, because after all, it's my whole goal to make you a better woodworker. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and keep on dancing.